Hi, I'm Jessica, and when I'm not drinking all the coffee, watching Razorback sports, or hanging out with my family of boys, it's my passion to help elementary music teachers just like you find your unique teaching style. My goal with this podcast is to share helpful tips, strategies, and to give you the motivation you need to gain momentum in your teaching so you can continue being the music teacher rock star you already are. Hey music teacher friend, I hope you're doing well. I want to tell you about something super exciting coming up this summer. On June 22nd, I will be hosting the free 5-day challenge called Start the School Year Off Right Challenge. In this challenge, you're going to learn all about how to start the school year off with success, whether that is going to be virtually or in person, or you're just not even sure what next school year is going to look like yet. On day 2, we're going to talk about work-home life balance, which is something we all need help and support in right now, especially during the time we're living in, I feel. Day 3 is going to be all about how to plan for next school year during the summer. And we'll talk about what your school year will look like and how you can plan to successfully teach next school year, even if it looks a little different than you think it might normally look. Day 4 is going to be all about reflecting on this school year. And oh my goodness, do we have a lot of reflecting to do, right? You had the beginning of the school year started off strong. You were in your classroom, and then you finished off probably the school year teaching virtually. So we're going to reflect on all that together and talk about ways you can move forward with taking what you learned into the next school year. And day 5 is going to be all about why professional development matters, why it's a good thing, how to find good professional development opportunities this summer, and how to find what you need for your particular teaching situation. So I would love for you to join us. The challenge starts on June 22nd, and simply head to subscribepage.com/music teacher challenge 2020, or simply click on the link in the show notes to join us. I cannot wait to see you there. And immediately after joining the challenge, you can join our Facebook group where I will be going live every day in the challenge. And there's so many amazing music teachers in there already a part of the group who are ready to support you and get to know you. So come on in and join us. I can't wait to help you get the forward momentum you need to go into next school year feeling successful. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you soon. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but you're listening to episode 100. What in the world? Speaking of world, today is all about social studies integration, so that was the perfect word to throw in there, ironically. But I was originally planning to do a little bit of a more creative episode for episode 100, but then quarantine happened. I am currently, if I can keep it real with all of you, in my closet because this is the only quiet spot in my house right now. I have my kiddos still at home quarantine schooling. I'm not calling it homeschooling, but quarantine schooling. And I had to go somewhere quiet to record. So this episode is going to be great. You're going to get so much from it, but my creative juices right now in trying to find like a fun, creative podcast episode to do for episode 100 just did not have time to do that. So anyways, today, let's move on. Today is about music and social studies integration for kids. So all in the episode 90s, if you scroll through and look at the different episodes in the 90s, there are podcast episodes for music and reading integration, music and math integration, and music and science integration. There also is a blog post that goes right along with each of those episodes, and there is going to be one to go along with this episode as well in the show notes. So today is about music and social studies, like I said. The thing that I was thinking about before I started recording is how much music teachers integrate with all the subjects, but with social studies, for me especially, without even thinking about it. One of the biggest ways you do this is by all the different music you are already teaching from other countries and cultures from around the world. You might be listening to this from like all kinds of different countries around the world, in fact. And wherever you're living, you're probably already teaching music from other cultures as well, which is one thing that's amazing about music, isn't it? That it's a universal language that kiddos, no matter where they live in the world, they can listen to the same music and learn the same music as other kids in other countries. And I think that's amazing. So the first way, honestly, without even thinking about it or calling it music integration, you're just already doing this, is by just teaching, like I said, music from other cultures and countries. One of the biggest questions I've gotten, actually, even more recently because of quarantine and school closures and virtual teaching and such, is about advocating for music. Now, that's a whole episode I've already done. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, sorry, but I know it was one of the earlier podcast episodes. But one thing I want you to think about, and this is totally off subject, but when you're thinking about advocating for your music class, sometimes it's not just about showing stats and, brain development and why music is important, but also just about, hey, did you know that I'm already integrating music with social studies? And here's how. Just having those things in your pocket to pull out. I don't mean literally in your pocket on paper, but just like, you know what I mean? Like just being able to pull out those things and telling them what you're doing in music and how it's helping kids learn in other subjects will be pretty impressive. And it just really is another way to advocate for your music class. So moving on. I just wanted to throw that in there real quick because I just wanted you to know that advocating for music sometimes can be as simple as that. Okay, so integrating music with social studies. Like I said, the first thing I want to say is one thing you're already doing, or you may not have done yet, but you want to do, is teaching songs and music from other countries and cultures. I just think it's amazing because a lot of times when kids come into your music room, they maybe have never learned a song from another culture or country. And I'm not just talking about learning a song in another language. Like if you're teaching kids a song, a Spanish song, and they are needing to learn the words in Spanish. That, of course, is what I'm talking about. But I'm also just talking about the fact that when you teach a song from Germany, just the music in general, not just the words, but then a song from Mexico, the music, not just the words, can sound different. So it's awesome being able to hear that, and you can talk to your kids in your music class about the different instruments they're hearing and how does it sound different. Are there any different tempos, or do you notice that? What do you think the musician is feeling when they wrote this song, or why did they write it? What do you think they use this song for in their culture? So it's a great way to just open conversations about music, like I said, from other cultures and countries. One of my favorite things to do when teaching different songs from around the world is to have a world map up on a bulletin board that's easily accessible or easy for you to just walk to and point at. And then you can always refer to where you live in, if you're listening to this from the United States or from wherever, you can point at where you and your students are located and say, now we're learning a song from, and then point at it from on the map. And then the kids are like, oh, wow, that's kind of far away, or, oh, that's near where we live. And they kind of get a visual idea of where they are learning that song from. So maybe you don't keep this map up all year. Maybe you just want to open it when you're learning about songs from other cultures, or maybe you want to just do a map like on the smart board. That's fine too. Just as long as I feel like visually able to show kids where they're learning music from, they're able to listen to it, learn it, experience it by learning different dances, the different instruments. You can even bring in different performers or musicians from that culture or country to perform for the kids. Show them videos of different dances that the people from that culture or country are experiencing or getting to do in their culture, and just different ways of experiencing music. It doesn't always have to just be about sitting down, learning a song and singing it, but let them experience it. When you're doing songs about China, do the Chinese dragon dance. Now, I always kept it simple. I didn't have a big dragon like we walked around the classroom with, but we would make using paper, and we would make like dragons that way and hold it above our head and make it look like the head and then the tail, and walk around the room and experience a dragon dance after they had watched a dragon dance on the internet. And so just like I said, just bringing different ways of the kids learning different songs and cultures from around the world is so exciting. So I get asked this question a lot too before I move on to the next point, is how do you do it? How do you teach different songs and cultures from around the world? Now, I have always been very honest on this podcast about this is my opinion. And if you talk to a music teacher, next door to you, they're going to have a different opinion. If you meet a music teacher at a workshop, they'll have a different opinion about this. Ask someone, just post something on Facebook and watch how many opinions you get. Is everybody's opinion wrong? No, of course not. But this is my opinion. And the way I started doing this was easier for me. And what I'm getting at is I started doing a culture or country of the month. Then I was able to pull songs from that culture or country and just do those songs with different grade levels. Sometimes K first and second would do the same songs, and sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes I would have a little bit of a different thing they would do. Even if they were doing the same songs, they might have a variation of activities they're doing to that song. Same with third, fourth, and fifth. But then also, I've met teachers who do it this way. They'll do a different culture or country of the month with lower elementary than they do with upper elementary. And that's completely fine too. So I like to do it, like I said, every month, a different one, because then I'm really able to choose songs and music that goes right along with that country or culture. But also realizing that there's so many other things that go on in the music room, and you only see your students for a limited amount of time. And so maybe you're only doing one song a month, and you're really focusing on like, okay, the first week, I just want to do like a 10-minute activity where we're learning the song together. If it isn't another language that your students do not speak, then they're able to learn the song and learn that language. Maybe you're wanting to read a book about it at first. Maybe week 2, you're focusing on dancing and learning a dance that goes along with that song, if it has one. And then maybe you're going to want to add some instruments and movement. I already said dancing, but maybe you're wanting to add other things to that as well. Like we talked about the dragon dance. So that's completely up to you. Or you might like to do where it's one day out of the month. It's completely just focused on that culture of the month, and you bring in a few songs and a few activities just to focus on that. Or maybe you don't want to do a culture or country of the month, but you like to do it by doing it as a unit. Maybe you have a whole unit in the school year, where you teach the instruments of the orchestra during a unit in the school year. Maybe you want to do that with culture or country of the month, and you maybe don't have time to go all the way around the world for every country, obviously, but you pick maybe, 5, and maybe you do 5 with lower elementary and 5 different ones with upper elementary. And then by the time they get to 5th grade, if they've been with you, since kindergarten, they've experienced 10 culture or countries of the month. So that is completely up to you the way you do it, but remembering that integrating music and social studies, the easiest way to do this is honestly just by learning music from around the world, which is an amazing way to do that. You already have classroom instruments that you probably didn't even realize. You realize they're from other countries or cultures, but maybe you've never told your students about it. I know in college, I made a Native American flute, and being able to show that to my students, they were like, wow, what is this? Because when you learn about the flute from the orchestra, it doesn't look like a Native American flute at all. So being able to show that to my students, and they were able to touch it, hold it, look at it, talk about how it's made of wood and not, what a metal, and what it looks, how it looks different, how it's held differently. I'm stumbling over my words a little. Sorry about that. And then also you could show them a steel drum. Maybe you can't bring one in, but maybe you show them when you're talking about Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago, you talk about the steel drum and how is this different? Do we have any drums that look like this in the United States? Do we, use this in a lot of our music? No, not usually. And then there's different kinds of African drums. You probably already have a bunch of these in your classroom. So show those to your students and explain to them how they're from different African cultures and countries, and how do they use them? Why do they have those drums? Why are there so many different types of drums? It just opens the conversation to being able to talk and collaborate with the classroom teacher about if they're doing a different culture or country. Say, hey, are your kids experiencing this culture or country? Maybe you could talk about what food they eat, the clothes they wear, the way the culture is, and I'll do the music part of it. And then you're kind of collaborating that way as well. Okay, let's move on. Another way to integrate music and social studies is by, if you are located in the United States, but learning the 50 state song. Now, if you're listening to this from another country, then you could do your own country song. And obviously, we're talking about the national anthem, your country's anthem, your country's national anthem, but also for United States, we have 50 states. So I know every country is different. One of my favorite ones that I ever taught to students is called 50 Nifty United States. It is kind of an older song, and it may be kind of hard to find now. It used to be back in one of the old music textbooks back in the day. But this song, it doesn't matter what 50 state song you teach to kids. I know I learned a different one with a different melody when I was in elementary school. But what's funny is the way I still retain the alphabetical order of the states is from that song. Still to this day, you guys, I mean, I have held on to that song for so many years, and it's funny. It's like, if not like anybody's ever like tell me all the states in alphabetical order, but if they did, I would be able to go through that song and immediately be like, oh, I remember all the states in order. And so teach your kids some kind of song that helps them remember the 50 states. This is a perfect way to integrate music and social studies. And so the reason I love 50 Nifty United States, this song not only teaches about the 50 states, obviously, because it's the name of the song, but about the colonies. It has a fun rhythm. It talks about how each state is important. But like I said, there's so many different state songs. It doesn't really matter which one you teach. But as long as the kiddos are, I feel like, learning it, especially you could figure out which grade level is doing the states. And maybe right when their teacher is teaching about the 50 states, that's the perfect opportunity for you to do a song. It doesn't need to be a whole entire 45 minutes long, of course, but teach a song that goes right along with it. And then the teacher may already have ideas for what different songs they're doing in their classroom. So just say, hey, why don't I work on that with the kids too? And then they can sing it in my classroom too. A lot of times you're also going to be asked to do maybe a state program or some kind of program about the United States or a program about a country or anything, anything like that. Well, doing a 50 state song, a lot of these songs you're already doing with the kids in your classroom, whether it's just songs from your classroom you're already doing or songs you're doing to integrate music with other subjects, you can easily pull those songs and add them into a program. And the kids they've already learned it. So it's not something you have to teach that's new. All right. The next way to integrate music with social studies is to name those presidents. While learning about the presidents, a good way to remember the names of the presidents and their order of what, when they were president is by creating a rap. Now, you've heard me mention, back when I did, if you didn't listen to that episode, that's okay, but you can go back and listen after this one. When I talked about integrating music and math, I talked about rapping math facts. And believe it or not, I know a lot of music teachers kind of have a little bit of pushback about rap is not music. It is because it's rhythms. It's letting the kids speak rhythms. And music does not just have to be about creating melodies and singing melodies. It's also about rhythms and beat. In elementary music teachers, you know that well. So when I say create a rap, well, you could just look at the president's names and the kids can help you create this. This is mainly a good activity for upper grades, like 4th and 5th grade. And so that's all they're doing is helping you create a rap of the president's names in order. Or you could give each, split them into small groups, and each group comes up with a rap for their president's names. Maybe you give each group 5 presidents or 10 presidents, and they come up with a rap to remember those presidents in order. And then you eventually put all of the raps together, so everybody is eventually memorizing the presidents together. So print out a list of presidents, try saying their names with a steady beat, and then maybe make it more fun by tapping a drum beat, make a rhythm while speaking, have the kids add instruments to their rhythms, and then just have fun with it. So naming those presidents by rapping. And then I want you to think about, the last thing I want to mention is how many songs about history there are. There's so many great songs that teach about history or tie in great with a history unit. Songs about wars, important people, about different countries. We already talked about that, about the particular country you live in, and about the world. I did a whole program before about Martin Luther King Jr. The students not only sang, but they recited poetry all about him. And it was awesome. I mean, before that, they probably knew a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, they learned about him in their classroom, but imagine how much more, not only that they learned about Martin Luther King Jr., but retained about him by singing, by learning it, by practicing it in our classroom all the time, by learning these poems that we spoke with rhythms, by talking about him in our classroom and sharing about the music that was there during his time, about gospel music. It was a great opportunity to learn so much around that leader. And so there's so many amazing leaders and different things that kids are learning even in history that you can teach music about or even do units about to help the kids retain what they're learning. So when you're doing this, students become more aware of what they're learning about the people in history's lives. By memorizing the songs, they're going to be able to retain the information for years and years to come. So I would love to know what you're doing in your classroom with integrating music with social studies. Are you doing any of these things you heard today, or are you going to plan to do some of these things with your students, whether virtually right now or in your classroom when you go back? I would love to hear all about it. And speaking of teaching virtually, you guys hang in there. You're doing a great job. And if you're stuck with coming up with new ideas, you feel like you've kind of exhausted all the ideas for virtual teaching, then reach out to the teacher and say, hey, if you're doing anything with social studies or history with your kids, I have some ideas. I would love to come on and help with that. And they were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it'd be a great way for you to connect with your students, but also a great way to collaborate with the classroom teacher. And maybe you're listening to this while it's already summertime, then hang on to these ideas. Bring them back with you into your classroom when you go back to school. And your students will love this. They're going to love it. They're going to love learning about music and also start connecting the dots between learning about music and social studies and how it all goes together, just like when we talked about reading, math, and science as well. So you guys have an amazing day. I will be back on next week, and I am cheering you on as you continue teaching music each and every day to your students. Thank you so much for listening in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, I would love for you to review the show and leave a rating on iTunes. To find out more about how I can help you gain momentum in your elementary music teaching career, head to thedomesticmusician.com, where you'll find free downloads, courses, the blog, and so much more. Continue teaching music and never doubt the impact you're making each and every day in the lives of your students.